Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Beverly Harper, president of Portfolio Associates. We're part of the Bus Network consultant team that's led by Nelson Nygaard. After a brief welcome from Bill Webster, Assistant General Manager for Communications at SEPTA, I'll be back on to talk a little bit more about what to expect this evening, and also a little bit about the technology. We have two great sign language interpreters that you'll be seeing on your screen this evening, and we thank them very much for being here. So, welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Beverly, and welcome everyone on behalf of SEPTA. As Beverly said, I'm Bill Webster, Assistant General Manager of Communications. And I want to say that we are extremely excited to be embarking on this Bus Revolution initiative. And this town hall or open house is really a key launch point for this. SEPTA's bus network is the backbone of our system and crucial to providing access and opportunity to people throughout the city and SEPTA's service area. In particular, the bus network provides key connections for the region's low-income population and communities of color. I want to emphasize that expansive and inclusive outreach is a key component of SEPTA's new strategic plan, which is why we're here today. The staff and the consultants working on this Bus Revolution initiative are committed to an engagement process that embraces four considerations. One, we're committed to being local, and by that I mean we want to meet our riders where you are, at bus stops, at transportation centers, at community meetings and events. Two, I want you to know that this is a sustained effort in outreach. We will meet with our customers and public throughout the process, from the beginning through implementation, through all phases. Third, we're committed to being responsive, and that means the Bus Revolution staff will listen actively to customer ideas and concerns, provide answers, and circle back if more research or analysis is needed. Fourth, we're committed to being transparent. We want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what is being proposed and why decisions are being made. While it's not possible to promise that everyone will be on board with each and every outcome, we do want people to feel like the process has been fair and that your voices and opinions are being heard. So on that note, I'm excited to help kick this off, and I'm going to turn it back to you, Beverly. Thanks again.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Just a little bit about what to expect this evening. There'll be several times where we'll do live polling. That means we'll ask questions. You'll have an opportunity to answer online, and then you'll see the answers, the combined answers immediately. Please, throughout the discussion this evening, please write any questions you have in the Q&A, and at the end of the session, they will be answered. We have technical support. We don't expect to have any issues, but this is technology, and it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday. So we don't know what to expect technology-wise. This is the second session we've had today. The first one at noon went extremely well. There were almost 100 people in it, and we had some great questions. This session is being recorded. You will hear this evening from Bethany Whitaker, who is the principal with Nelson Nygaard and the project manager for this assignment. You'll also hear from Dan Nemiroff, who is the manager of planning programs at SEPTA. When we get to the Q&A section, Henry Felsman from my staff will read the questions, and then either Bethany or Dan will answer them. please, again, put your questions in the Q&A. Your microphones are not enabled, so you won't be able to speak so that the participants can hear you. But that's why we've provided for you to put questions, comments, suggestions in the Q&A. I have a couple of questions, two questions for a poll right now, and I'll ask Henry to enable the first poll. This is Philadelphia, so we can't get away without asking something about sports. And the question is, this is really to make sure our technology is working and to get you used to doing this. Who will be the starting quarterback for the Eagles next season? Will it be Jalen Hurts, Joe Flacco? Are we bringing back Nick Foles to win another Super Bowl? And for the old heads in the audience, are we bringing back Ron Jaworski? And for the couple of people in the audience who dared to answer this part of the question, they're a Giants fan. So please answer. About 57% of you have answered right now. You can answer right online. I'll give you 5 or 6 more seconds to answer. Okay. We're getting the hang of it now. 67% have answered. And the results. Jalen Hurts. That will take us to the Super Bowl. Thank you very much. Henry, the second question. When is the last time you rode a SEPTA bus? Today, within the last week, within the last month, not since before COVID. And people are moving along quickly. About 79 or 80% of you have answered. Very interesting. Can I get a couple more answers here? Okay, I'll give you 4 more seconds to respond. 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see the results. Wow, pretty even. So we have a number of bus riders in the audience. That's great, and I'm sure SEPTA is very happy to hear that or to see that. We have one more question in this section. One year from now, this is a prospective question. 1 year from now, how often do you see yourself riding SEPTA buses? Almost every day, frequently, occasionally, rarely, or never? Great answers. About 70% of you have answered. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, let's see the responses. SEPTA is very happy with this. Most people said that they see themselves riding SEPTA buses frequently 1 year from now. So we'll be able to hold on until then. Thank you very much for participating in the poll. I'd like to now turn the presentation over to Bethany Whitaker, the principal with Nelson Nygaard. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you, Beverly. So, as Beverly mentioned, my name's Bethany Whitaker. I work for a consulting firm called Nelson Nygaard. We specialize in transit planning, and we're the prime firm for the comprehensive bus network redesign, which is branded as SEPTA Forward Bus Revolution. So I have a short presentation today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project, give you an overview of what we're trying to accomplish, talk about the goals, then dive in a little bit to the technical approach, share some preliminary findings, talk about how we plan to engage stakeholders and members of the public, and then we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes or so for questions and answers, and then I'll share some information about how you can stay in touch with the project. So in terms of the project is branded as SEPTA Forward Bus Revolution for a reason, because we really envision this to be a revolutionary project where we're going to reimagine SEPTA's bus network. So everything's on the table. We're going to take a look at changing or the potential to change all parts of the SEPTA network. This includes when the buses run, both by the times of the day, but also days of the week, and how and where we make investments. We'll also look at the locations where bus services begin and end and travel, look at neighborhoods, corridors, communities, parts of the suburbs, the urbanized area, and then we'll also look at different transit service models. So we may consider things like bus rapid transit or increasing amounts of direct bus service. We might also look at microtransit or other different types of services. So everything's on the table. We're taking a top to bottom look, and our goal is to really strengthen and improve the way that SEPTA provides bus services. So in terms of specific goals, we've set a handful of them for ourselves. The first one is to make service easier to understand and use. The second one is to make service faster and more reliable. The third is to make services easier and more efficient to operate. And then lastly, we want to respond to the changing travel patterns that are happening in Southeast Pennsylvania and the city of Philadelphia. And so with that, I'm going to pause for a minute and ask Henry to bring up another poll. And I would like to get you guys to weigh in and let us know what your priorities are for these among these goals. So we have a poll up here, and it's just asking you to pick which of the goals is most important. Easier to understand and use, making service faster, more reliable, making it easier and more efficient to operate, or responding to changing travel patterns. So we have about 70 or 80% of the people responding. I'll give you a couple more seconds and then we can close it. So I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we can close the poll. And looks like the vast majority of people said that the primary goal should be faster and more reliable service. And that is exactly what we heard this morning as well, or at lunchtime today, where the vast majority of people said that the main goal should be speed and reliability. So that is great. Thanks for that feedback. And then we have another poll, which is, so we gave you 4, but we know that there's many other things that we can do to improve SEPTA's bus service. So 4 more choices. The first one is, we've labeled it connections, and it's, is an important goal making connections between services. Number 2 is comfort, and that's both when you're waiting for the bus, but in the bus while you're traveling. Third is sustainability, electric vehicles, things like that, staying sustainable. And then the fourth one is affordability. So go ahead, take a minute, tell us among these second tiers of 4 goals, which are the most important to you? All right, so we have almost about 75% of the people voting. So again, I'll just count down from 5 seconds just to kind of encourage you to, if you want to vote, to provide your vote. And so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we can close the poll. And so look like, again, by a pretty good margin, that connections are the most important. Of these 4 goals, you all voted that connections is the most important. So thank you very much for that feedback. These are the kind of things that we're going to be asking you about and talking, as we embark on the project. So we can go back to the slides. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical approach now. And because this is a bus revolution, the technical approach is significant. The project is scheduled to last about 3 years. So we started in February of this year, and we're scheduled to finish up in 2023. The first 2 years are about data analysis, doing research, talking to members of the community, and doing a lot of public outreach. And then the third year is about implementation. So the steps for the project are, first, we're doing a state of the system analysis, and that's where we're looking at all of the travel patterns, where people are living, where they're working, where they're traveling, what times of day that they're traveling, and looking at the region as a whole and trying to understand how people are moving across that region. At the same time that we're doing the state of the system analysis, we'll begin to do the evaluation of SEPTA's individual bus routes. There are over 125 bus routes in SEPTA's network. We're going to take a look at each one of these bus routes, look at each bus trip, so each bus that by the time of day and by stop to understand how well it's being used. Through this process of doing the state of the system analysis and evaluating individual bus routes, and of course talking to members of the community, we'll identify lots of opportunities for improvement. We'll take those improvements and package them in different ways, create scenarios, and then bring those scenarios out to the community and ask people what they like about them and what they don't like about them, so we can develop a draft recommended scenario or option for improvements. We'll bring those out to the community again for feedback and input, and then make a final recommendation and then move into implementation. And as I talk about the technical approach, I will also talk about stakeholder and community engagement, but I do want to let you know that we know that, of course, we want to do a data-driven approach that reflects sound analytic processes, but at the end of the day, we know that the bus network works well when it has a lot of riders on the bus. And that is our goal, and that's one of our key objectives. So what I want to do now is to share some preliminary findings from some of the technical work that we've done so far to date, and just kind of give you a little bit of insights and ideas about some of the work that we're doing. And all of this work will be shared as we move forward. We're going to put it on the website, and we'll bring it out to the community and let you look at it and read it and provide feedback to us. So as I mentioned, one of the key first steps that we're doing is taking a look at transit needs. So this involves both a market analysis. So where are the people who need transit services, who want to ride the bus, and where are they looking to go? So it's one of our first steps, and there are a bunch of things that we know that influence transit needs and where people are looking to travel. So population density, demographics, employment, and overall travel patterns are all things that predict where and how people will use the bus. And what I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about some of our approach for the population density and demographic analysis. So this is only one piece of the overall analysis. We're going to be doing lots of other things. There's a lot of maps that you'll see out of this study. This is just a peek at some of the earliest maps that we're producing. So this map that you see on the right hand of your screen is a map of population density. So the number of people that live in per acre. Areas that have a brighter red color to them are areas where there's more people, higher density. And density is really important for transit because where there's more people, there's a bigger market for transit services, and there's more people that can walk to the bus. And so we know density is really important, but we also know that not everybody rides transit in the same way. So we looked at some surveys that SEPTA has done over the past years and tried to taken a look at what are the characteristics of the people who ride the bus. So we know, for example, that people who live in households that don't have access to a vehicle or don't reliably have access to a vehicle are more than 2 times likely to ride the bus than people who have access to ride a vehicle. I think that that's very intuitive and logical. We know there's some other traits that also influence transit needs, like race, income, age, and ability. And so we are taking the data from the SEPTA surveys and then applying it to population densities. So in cases where we have higher densities of people who are Black or people who live in poverty or people who are age 65 or over, we're weighting those individuals and those communities at a higher level. And so what that means is that we increase the importance of those communities when we're looking at transit needs and transit opportunities. And so this slide right here compares the 2 maps. The one on the left is just population density, and the one on the right is the adjusted population density. And when you look at these maps, you can really see that the color red is brighter and there's more of it, and some of the areas really fill out. And that what that tells us is, in addition to having a lot of people, there are also a lot of people that are likely to ride the bus, either because of their income, their age, their race, their access to vehicle, whatever the characteristics that we are finding through surveys and other data sources that are tied to using transit, where we're increasing the importance of those when we look at the community overall. We'll do a similar analysis for employment. We'll also be looking at travel flows. And like I said, you'll be seeing a lot of maps from this project and a lot of analysis. This is just one that I wanted to share and start to talk to you a little bit about how we're doing this. So the second piece of the technical approach that I wanted to talk about is how we're going to be evaluating routes. So SEPTA has been running a lot of bus routes for a long time. Some of those bus routes are really successful. Others have opportunities where they could do things better. I think when you guys did the poll, the value or the goal that you rated the highest was speed and reliability. That tells us that some buses are not always reliable and some might be slow. So some of the things that we're going to be looking at as we evaluate each route are things like reliability and on-time performance. We'll also look at ridership. We'll look at patterns. We'll look at how services integrate with other SEPTA services, like how the bus works with the subway or how the bus works with the regional rail. And our goal is both to do the evaluation to understand really where we can take what's working well and do more of that, and where things aren't working well to do less of that. So I'm just going to show you one more graphic just as an example of some of the maps and types of information that you're going to see. This is a ridership map for Route 52 from Girard Avenue to Woodland Avenue. And what it shows us is this is a map of people, or the bus is traveling northbound. So we call that the outbound direction. And the data is from fall 2019, so before COVID. And what this data shows is the green color shows us where people are getting on, and the red color is showing us where people are getting off. So when this bus leaves, it's starting, a lot of people are getting on all the way up, and then once it starts to get to Baltimore Avenue, people start to get off, and then it gets to Market Street, and then the riders really start to turn over. And we have almost as many people getting off as they are getting on. And then as it continues north, more people are getting off than getting on. So this kind of information is super helpful to us as we understand how the route is productive and successful and where it's attracting riders and how people are using it. So again, just a preliminary finding. It's intended to just be a taste of some of the kind of information that we're going to be sharing as a result of this study and this analysis. And we will put all of our route evaluations as well as the state of the system report will be available online, as well as other resources, so people can take a look at it, read it, and provide some comments. So I mentioned before the importance of stakeholder and community engagement, and this is also something that Bill alluded to when he introduced and welcomed us to this meeting. So I just wanted to start from there and again reiterate that like I said, at the end of the day, the bus service is intended and designed to serve people. So we care about riders and individuals and people and what they want. So we've set some principles and guidelines for how we're going to do the engagement. And these include making sure that we do a customized and tailored approach, that we meet people where they are. And again, Bill spoke to this a lot, and it means that we go out into the communities. We will go to bus stops and transfer centers and community-based organizations and street fairs and things like this, so we can make it easy for as many people to interact with us as possible. We're also making a lot of efforts to ensure that our approach is equitable and is transparent, and then that we will also commit to responding and adapting. We know that everything we do might not work out perfectly, so if we're learning as we're going, we're going to adjust and respond to those demands. And then throughout the process, you'll see that in many cases, we'll be providing information, but there'll also be a lot of times when we're asking you for information as well. So when we think about the technical approach, and I walk through all of the stages of the projects, there's several of the several of the technical steps where we're going to need a lot of engagement, it will have a big effort. We will always be available. We'll always have a website. We'll always be pushing information out. But there's some times that we really are looking for a lot of input. So key among those times are in the spring of this year, the summer of this year, when we're collecting information, we're understanding how things work. And then when we move to having those scenarios and those ideas about how we can improve systems, we'll have another big push. We expect that to be in the winter, later this year, beginning of next year. And then over the summer of next year, we should be able to come back to you with draft and final recommendations so that we can move forward to implementation in 2023. And then just a little bit about each of these steps. So right now we're in the project initiation phase, and we're really trying to work with you to understand your concerns, your values, your desires, what your hopes and aspirations are. We're also building our infrastructure and our resources for how we can contact people in the future. So given we're still kind of transitioning out of COVID, we have a virtual information hub, which includes a website, but there's also a telephone number. We have a short survey that we're asking people to fill out that gives us some information about them, asking a handful of questions. We're doing these open houses today, and then we'll also be holding a lot of interviews with different stakeholders, including different departments within SEPTA, within the City of Philadelphia, as well as community-based organizations, transportation management associations, and other stakeholders and groups across the region. As we move into the summer and into the fall, we're going to have a big focus on choices and trade-offs. There's a lot of things about providing bus service that involves some trade-offs or some choices about how we want to provide service. So we'll be doing some transit talks, preparing some videos, holding some workshops, and doing some in-person events as well to talk about those choices and trade-offs and ask people what their preferences are and what their priorities. If you can have this or that, which of one of those things is more important and why? We'll also be doing some more surveys in the fall, and then we will also be publishing a lot of information both about the state of the systems finding, but also the route evaluations. And every time that we publish information, we'll always provide opportunities to comment on it and to provide feedback to us. The next step is developing the alternatives. And this, in many ways, is sort of like the meat and the crux of the analysis, where we're going to say, okay, here are a handful of ideas for how we can improve the bus network. We want to understand from you what you like, what you don't like, so we can get to that perfect alternative that's going to meet as many people's needs and opportunities as possible. We know we're not going to be able to keep everybody happy all the time, but we want to at least make sure that people have an opportunity to weigh in and understand what their choices are and why we have done something. So again, a lot of different activities, some more surveys, and a lot of information published on the or available through the information hubs. And then finally, we'll have draft recommendations, and so we'll take the scenarios, come back out to the community and share some draft recommendations, give everybody one more chance to tell us what we have right and what we don't have right, and really finalize those recommendations and make final decisions about what we're going to do moving forward. And then the final stage of the engagement is centered around implementation. And so we will provide a lot of resources to guide riders to help them understand and learn about what's changing and when. We'll have a lot of people, we call them street teams, that are out in the communities, standing on the street corners, helping people to understand how their service might be changing. And again, we'll do a lot of engagement. We'll have a lot of information online and other formats. And so with that, I'm going to pause and bring up another poll asking people about what their preferences are for different engagement types. So we should be able to get that up. Great, thank you. And so this one is just asking you, what are the best ways for us to stay connected with you? Is it through surveys or community meetings? Do you like social media? Are you hoping to see a lot of pop-up events in your neighborhood? Do you like watching videos? So go ahead and take a look at that and let us know what your preferences are.
While people are filling out the survey, I want to remind them that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And when Bethany is finished, we will have answers to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. I meant to mention that along the way, but so thank you for reminding us.
That's okay. We're a team.
Appreciate that. All right, so we're like almost at 75% of the people. So if you're interested in voting, go ahead and try to get your vote in. Give you a couple more seconds. And I think we can go ahead and close the poll. So thank you again for filling this out. It looks like surveys were the most frequently picked way for us to stay connected with you. And that's great because we do have a lot of surveys that we're planning to issue and do as part of this effort. And then also community meetings, social media, websites, and pop-up events also got a lot of support. So again, that's great. Those are the core things that we are planning to do. So hopefully there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to connect with you and talk to you about the bus revolution. And so with that, I am going to invite Beverly and Henry and Dan Nimiroff from SEPTA to the meeting, and we're opening up the presentation for the open house for questions and answers.
Thank you for your patience. The way this works is Henry will read a question, and then Bethany or Dan will answer it, and occasionally I'll pop in with a comment. Henry.
All right, again, some good questions in. I'll try to get to them all. First question is, I live in Center City and use SEPTA here in Center City and other neighborhoods. Traffic congestion has slowed down bus travel. And in particular, I do not see much enforcement regarding blocking bus stops and bus lanes. What are the possibilities in this project for doing more here?
I can start, Bethany.
Okay.
Obviously, speed and reliability are, that's the primary concern people have had with the project or with the network as a whole. And, we are working with the city. They did release a transit priority plan or a master plan, and they identified several transit corridors, many of which were in Center City. And we do have some projects in the works looking at different ways to improve transit operations on those streets. And enforcement is part of that. We view this project as feeding into this project and that project is being related, and we hope to continue that work. And we think that since we're working with the city closely on this project, we think some improvements can be made, perhaps even within the lifespan of this project.
Okay. Henry.
All right. Would you be able to do some quick rollout pilot projects during the process so riders can see some near-term changes and provide feedback based on that direct experience?
Do you want to? I'll start, and then Dan, I think you can speak to the pilot projects. I will say, so Nelson Nygaard, we've done bus network redesigns in communities all across the country. And as we do the route evaluation process and the market analysis, we always find some quick things that we can do that make service a little bit better, a little bit more efficient to operate. And almost always we find that transit agencies are able to implement some of those things quickly. The whole network redesign does require we have to do more planning and preparation for big changes, but there's always some small things that we can get started. And in terms of pilots, I'll ask Dan to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that I was going to say very much the same thing, Bethany. I think through the evaluation process, we'll identify some quick wins to sort of maybe some of the stronger performing routes that have high ridership, but maybe aren't operating as well as they could be. But I think a pilot, some sort of pilots where we, sort of put them under the umbrella of Bus Revolution, I think is a great idea. And it's something that we'd like to do. And I think the staff at SEPTA would be very interested in rolling some of those projects out.
We are aware that in the past, SEPTA has done some pilot projects. I think what we can expect in this project is when we do a pilot, there will be an evaluation. There'll be a lot of feedback from the community about how well the pilot is doing. So we want the pilots under the Bus Revolution to be a little more robust and to have a little more engagement and to have an evaluation component that lets us know whether that pilot becomes something that will be permanent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Beverly.
Henry?
Will there be a focus on increasing frequency and reliability of routes that connect to heavy rail? For example, this person lives about a mile from an L stop yet cannot reliably get there by bus because of the frequency of the interconnection.
So again, I can start, and then Dan, you can kind of chime in, or but so I don't think we've made any decisions about what we're going to do or what we're not going to do. Integration with rail and the fixed guideway system, the existing, the heavier infrastructure, is a really important part of the system, and we want to avoid duplication between services. So I think those are all things that we're going to look at, because yes, if you live a mile away from a train station, it would be great to be able to get there reliably and quickly so that you can access those regional services. I will say something that I probably should have said earlier. The bus revolution is going to happen within the existing budget. So we are trying to make improvements to services based on the existing resources. So that means that if we're going to add service and increase frequencies somewhere, we're going to have to take service away somewhere else. And how we strike those balances and find those areas where there are opportunities to do more of something, because there are a lot of riders, there's a lot of demand for service, will be taken from parts of the system where there's less demand for services. And so I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think integrating the bus network with the rail transit network, the Broad Street line and Market Frankfurt line particularly, I think is important. But Bethany does make a good point. If we're increasing frequency and increasing service on some corridors or routes, we have to make changes to other ones which would lessen those frequencies. So yeah, striking the balance, maintaining some service. We haven't decided, but we do think integrating the two different modes is important.
Okay, and are suburban routes included in this project?
Yes.
Okay.
That was an easy one.
Yeah. There are a lot of city routes, but there aren't 125 of them. The whole network is being evaluated, and the whole network will be, changed. Not every single route, but the changes will be throughout the system.
All right, here's a good one. How will the project account for COVID-19 ridership impacts? Also, will the project review current routes and investigate new routes in the surrounding counties? I think we answered the latter, but can you speak to the impacts of COVID on this project?
So what I can speak to is the way that we're going to be doing the evaluation. And then Dan, maybe you can talk a little bit about how SEPTA ridership has changed during COVID. So yes, we know that COVID has a major impact in the way people are using SEPTA. So what our approaches involves both looking at data from 2019 before COVID happened. So we can take a look and understand how people were using the routes and traveling around the region before COVID. We also know that COVID has changed. So COVID happens. There's been a lot of public health concerns, and the way that people are using the bus network has changed. So we're also looking at data from fall 2020 during COVID. And so we can compare and contrast the two ways that people are using the network. And then we're going to be doing some evaluation and trying to understand if we think that the current how those two patterns and experiences relate to each other and what we think is going to happen moving forward.
Yeah, I think Bethany covered it pretty well, but I would just add a few things. We are looking at both pre-COVID and during COVID ridership. As everyone can probably surmise, ridership has been down. We're about 50 to 60% of where we were pre-COVID. And we've done some analysis and modeling on where we might end up sort of over the next year or so. And, we're taking that into account. And also, while this project is going on, while we're meeting with the public and evaluating our routes and that kind of thing, we're also going to be collecting data. We're still collecting ridership data. And we are going to, as we go through the network, as we start discussing, internally and with the public changes we might be considering, we will be thinking about what is happening, sort of at that moment in time so that we're not missing anything. But I do want to say that, out of all the modes, the bus network has been, amongst the most resilient. It bounced back, pretty quickly. I mean, compared to, regional rail and so on. So we still anticipate, providing, really strong bus service, and the other thing that I think is important to take away is the strong routes pre-COVID, 2019, the strongest routes remain the strongest routes. We haven't really seen any surprises in the data. There's not, the routes that you would think are best performing, most effective, highest ridership routes have remained so through COVID. So there is some consistency in the data, though obviously the ridership is down.
Great. A lot of these questions, there's some overlap, but I think they're worth asking again, just to keep track of the important differences that are there. So this is about looking at combining routes in addition to redesigning or rerouting. For example, will City and Victory division routes be combined? And this person cited routes U and 108 were combined a little while back.
Okay, so I think it makes sense for me to start, and then Dan, you can kind of clarify or correct anything that I say. So yes, we do expect that some routes could get combined. Again, this is a data-driven approach, and then also with a lot of input from riders and members of the community. So I don't have an answer yet, but I do think this idea that routes that are running parallel to each other, maybe there's routes on two parallel corridors, they run once an hour, that it's actually better for riders if we operate one route on the corridors that are send a bus every 30 minutes. The increased frequency outweighs walking, depending on the block size and where the routes are. But this idea that we can consolidate some service to make it more efficient and a higher quality service is something that we are definitely going to be considering and looking at.
Yeah, I think that's a fine answer. I think that, consolidating, adjacent or nearby services is a hallmark of these types of projects, and it's something we're definitely going to look at. And we might also, on the other hand, we do have a number of longer routes in our system. We might look at also splitting them up if that makes sense as well. I mean, I think all of these types of improvements are on the table, and we'll be, talking about them internally and talking about them with our partners and talking about them with the public.
We know that whenever we ask people to change a particular pattern of commuting, that sometimes becomes contentious. So there will be a lot of engagement around trade-offs and the kinds of changes that are going to be proposed and how people will respond to those. So there are a number of moving parts to making changes in the system. But having grown up in Philadelphia, I know that there are at times adverse reactions to change. So we want to make sure that we're communicating effectively and completely, getting input and trying, and at the same time, trying new things so that we meet some of the goals that people have expressed.
So that's an excellent point, Beverly. And just to kind of pull that thread a little bit more, I think this idea of consolidating routes, and before I talked about choices and trade-offs, so these are the kind of things that we're going to be asking you. Would you prefer to have a route that runs, that you have to walk a little bit further to, but it comes every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes? Or would you rather have a bus route that's closer to your house that only comes once every 30 minutes or once every 40 minutes? What to you is a better level of service? What to you is more convenient? And those are the kind of things that we're going to be exploring with you as members, stakeholders, and members of the public, because there's different ways to do it. Both have value and benefit, and we want to understand how we can maximize the benefit to the system overall and to the most people that use the bus.
And we know that there may be different answers for different communities. You know, it's not
Exactly.
going to be a one size fits all, or everybody's going to get the same solution. So those are the kinds of things that the kinds of hard decisions that will have to be made and communicated.
Right. So in Center City, where it's basically a walker's paradise, right? There's a lot of sidewalks everywhere, crosswalks, streetlights. It's an easy place to walk around. So maybe it's worth it to walk an extra block to get to a bus that's going to come more frequently. But when you get out into the suburbs where there's less likely to be sidewalks or crosswalks, then maybe you'd make a different choice.
I got a couple of questions here, one about Center City and one about stakeholder engagement. Responding to what you just said. So I'll start with stakeholder community engagement. I'm on the board of my local civic association and would love to have a community meeting with SEPTA and the project team. What is the best way to set that up and stay in contact throughout the process?
Okay, so that's a great question. We'd love to talk with you more and come and make a presentation. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to show a bunch of ways to get in touch with us. And I can't remember what the email is off the top of my head, but the website is septabusrevolution.com. So you can go there and provide a comment or send us an email or give us a call on the telephone and let us know when you're available for a meeting, and we'd love to come and make a presentation.
It's bus network
Yeah,
at SEPTA. There we go.
There you go. Thank you. Yep.
But we're happy to meet with community groups. That's going to be a big part of the outreach push is meeting people locally, and getting audiences that are interested in engaging.
All right, now the Center City question. Center City has greater density and therefore more potential for ridership, but residents there often have a lot of options in terms of public transit. But those in the neighborhoods further out may not and may have greater need but less density. So how will you address that?
Yeah, I think that is a part of the analysis that I shared, some of those preliminary findings, where yes, Center City also popped up bright red, right? Because we know there's a lot of people there. But also some of the neighborhoods, we can weight them differently because they might have higher concentrations of people over the age of 65 or lower income populations or people without access to vehicles. And so we have to balance both of those needs, both the higher density of Center City, but also the needs and the opportunities that people have to travel in some of the neighborhoods. And by adjusting things based on race, income, ability, and age, that gives us an opportunity to kind of balance things differently. Same for employment and some of the other travel patterns. We'll be able to weight and balance things in different ways so we can understand true needs and where there are opportunities and where there aren't.
All right. And will the 2018 SEPTA Jared Walker Choices Report and its suggestions be taken into consideration, at least in the first stage?
I guess I can take this one.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that project is a resource. The data that was used in that report is now 6 years old. So, we'd have to, rethink some of the recommendations, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a resource that, Nelson Nygaard has available. And, as the project evolves, we can kind of go through it and see, what ideas still have some merit and what needs some further analysis.
How will ADA needs be addressed in this project, i.e. ensuring that routes serve hospitals and other medical facilities?
Yep. So this is a good question. We got this question at lunchtime as well, and I probably should have spoken a little bit more about it when I was going through the project. So for people with disabilities and ADA considerations, there's a couple of ways that we'll be taking these into consideration, into account. So for sure, when we do outreach and engagement, we will make sure that our materials are accessible to people of all abilities, and we'll also go out of our way to make sure that we engage with people who have disabilities either through places where people work or live, or working with other stakeholders to make sure that we engage and hear the voices of people with disabilities who use the bus network. The other thing when we're designing bus network, bus routes, we want to make sure that they are as accessible as possible. We know people with disabilities ride the bus in disproportionate numbers, and so we want to make sure that people can get to the bus route. They're safe and comfortable when they're waiting for the bus. They're able to cross the street, that there's curb cuts. So I think a lot of this is going to involve collaboration with the city and other stakeholders as we look at our infrastructure and look at how accessible everything is. But making sure that people can get to the bus services is a really fundamental goal of our analysis.
Hi, this is Bill Webster.
One of the things that we know is that during last year, there are lots of other organizations that serve people with disabilities that have started, and we would like you to. We're building a database of organizations that we need to reach out to. We have a pretty good start, but if you know of organizations, we'd like you to visit the website, septabusrevolution.com, and also you can send us information through our email. But we know that there are new organizations that may not have made it to our database. So we're asking that if you know of organizations, please let us know, and we're happy to add them to our engagement portfolio and reach out to them.
And Beverly, I just wanted to add that as we make these types of decisions, we're also factoring in the SEPTA network as a whole. We're making a lot of decisions about how to better serve the ADA community through all of our modes. And that includes, for example, our trolley modernization initiative, which looks at modernizing our trolleys so that they are more ADA accessible. We're also looking at how we improve our train platforms so that they are more ADA accessible, including more elevators. So we look at these factors as well to make sure our network as a whole provides greater accessibility, and that way provides greater equity for the ADA community. So that is a factor when we make some of these decisions, in addition to just the decisions about the bus network specifically.
All right.
I think we have time for two more questions before we wrap up. So Henry, choose wisely.
All right, let's see here. What have we not addressed? Okay. Will this project include street upgrades, such as priority signaling, busways, improved stops and shelters?
Dan, you want to take that one?
Yeah. We covered a little bit of this earlier, but we anticipate additional recommendations that complement the city's transit plan for a lot of those things. We do have an ongoing partnership with the city through a transit priority committee where we have active projects where we're looking at this. And, we anticipate additional work from Bus Revolution and the consultant team that'll complement that work and sort of put us on a path forward. And Bethany had mentioned some potential pilot projects, and maybe there's an opportunity there to sort of jump on something a little early and pilot something that's a little more revolutionary, and try out like some new lanes or something like that. That's an actual physical infrastructural improvement.
And just to make sure we're clear, we certainly are going to collaborate with the city. We certainly want to get as much cooperation and support. But for example, the bus shelters are not SEPTA property, for lack of a better word. So we can recommend, but those are not decisions that we can make, just so that everyone's clear on those.
Okay, I think I found a fitting final question here. Would there be a framework for SEPTA to use after the bus network revolution is completed, to add routes, adjust routes, etc.?
Yeah. SEPTA actually already has some, we call them service standards or service guidelines, where you say, oh, if you're carrying this many passengers an hour, you should increase frequency. We should match it with the number of times the bus comes, or how, there's already some hierarchy of service, but this will definitely be the framework that the project will produce and adjust. Yep.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we want to put something in place that is that can be improved upon and built upon and managed and maintained into the future.
Thank you for those excellent questions and answers. And please, if you still have additional questions, you can put them in the Q&A as we're wrapping up, and all of the questions will be answered. Bethany, I think you're up for the wrap.
Right. Thank you. So thank you guys very much. I know that it is a beautiful evening out there. So thanks for spending some time with us and listening to, what we're intending to do with this project. We appreciate all your questions and your participation in the polls. We want to stay in touch. So we do have a website, septabusrevolution.com. You can go there. There's a fact sheet. There's some frequently answered questions. We're going to be updating those. We'll start posting materials in the next coming weeks or months. Right now, we also have a short survey. We'd love to have people fill that out. We also, if you don't have access to a website or you prefer to talk to a human being, we have a telephone number that you can call. It's available Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from about 8 a.m. till noon. And then also we have an email address. So feel free to shoot us an email and let us know what your questions are. And we just hope to stay in touch over the coming weeks. And thanks again for participating tonight.
This is the first of many engagements with the community that SEPTA bus network serves. We look forward to coming to you again and visiting your communities. Thank you for being here this evening. And in about 30 seconds, it'll be 7 o'clock, and I'm known for ending a meeting on time. So thank you, everybody.